the truth be known to all of them. I'm not some big star. I'm just me.
MV Griffin had everything. He created Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. He owned hotels and made billions. Hollywood loved him. But in 1991, two men filed lawsuits against him. One demanded $200 million for palimony. The other claimed sexual harassment. Both cases were dismissed, but the damage was done. Even after his death in 2007, the rumors persisted. He had built an empire, but these accusations became the one stain he couldn't wash away. MV Griffin was born on July 6, 1925, in San Mateo, a quiet upper-class suburb near San Francisco. His family had money, but it didn't last. When the Great Depression hit, his father, a stockbroker, lost much of their wealth. They moved into a small apartment. MV had to share a room with his sister. That early taste of financial insecurity stayed with him for life. Even though he would later create game shows worth billions, he grew up knowing how quickly everything could disappear. At school, MV wasn't popular. He was overweight, about 240 pounds as a teenager, and shy. He didn't fit in, but he had one thing most kids didn't: talent. At just 7 years old, he was caught humming perfectly in tune by a priest while waiting for confession. Soon after, he joined the church choir. By 10, he was playing Bach on the church organ, his feet barely touched the pedals. By 15, he was earning $35 a week, about $650 today, as the official organist. He practiced for hours every day, sometimes until his fingers bled. And he did it all without a single music lesson. He learned by ear and had perfect pitch. MV also had ambition. He joined the ROC in college and lost 25 pounds to meet military standards. But in 1944, at age 18, a heart murmur kept him out of World War II. About 39% of his classmates went to war. MV stayed behind. It made him feel guilty, so he did what he could. He performed in 127 USO shows over the next 2 years, entertaining wounded soldiers at California hospitals. That missed draft gave him an unexpected edge. While others were overseas, MV had no competition in entertainment, and he used that time well. Right after his first big radio appearance in 1944, fans were stunned by his looks. He had a beautiful voice, but he was still heavy. Determined to change, MV dropped 80 pounds in just 4 months. His diet was brutal: black coffee, 1 meal a day, and cigarettes. But it worked. Freddie Martin, a famous band leader, heard him on the radio and offered him a job, $250 a week, 4 times what MV made before. Over the next 4 years, MV toured 47 states with Martin's orchestra. He learned how to work a crowd. At the Roosevelt Hotel in New York, he performed night after night for stars like Frank Sinatra. They recorded 32 songs together, and their biggest hit, the Trolley Song, reached number 18 on the Billboard charts. In the end, they fought over royalties. MV walked away from a $400 a week salary to take a chance on himself. That gamble paid off. On November 12, 1948, MV talked his way into the Coconut Grove, one of LA's most glamorous nightclubs. He lied, saying Sinatra recommended him and that he was already a headliner in San Francisco. None of it was true. He got a 15-minute opening slot and sang a silly British novelty song called "I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts." The crowd roared. He was called back for 3 encores. That one performance landed him a 6-week gig at $850 a week and a deal with RCA Victor just 2 days later. The song went on to sell 3.4 million copies. Decades later, MV built a tribute nightclub at his own hotel, calling it the Coconut Club, remembering the song that started everything. But even before all this, MV had already started his own record label. At just 19, he launched Panda Records. It was a bold move, and his first release, Songs by MV Griffin, 1946, became the first album in America recorded on magnetic tape. That wasn't just a footnote, it changed the way records were made. While most artists had no say in how their music was produced, MV controlled every part of his. Coconuts made him famous, but MV kept proving he wasn't a one-hit wonder. His next song, Wilhelmina, was a playful tune that got nominated for an Oscar. He followed it up with Never Been Kissed and Music, all hits. These songs helped push him toward film roles, especially as he proved he could sing, act, and charm an audience. His big break into Hollywood came thanks to Doris Day. She saw him perform in a nightclub and was so impressed that she pulled strings to get him a screen test at Warner Brothers. He didn't get the role she had in mind, but he got something bigger, a contract. That deal opened the door to multiple film roles. MV and Doris stayed friends for decades. She appeared on his talk show many times, and he always credited her for jump-starting his film career. One of his first big movies was So This Is Love, released in 1953. In it, MV kissed co-star Kathryn Grayson on screen. It sounds simple now, but it wasn't then. The kiss was open-mouthed, something the strict Hollywood rules of the time didn't allow. It was one of the first to challenge the Hays Code, which banned anything considered too sexual. MV didn't mean to start a revolution, but in that moment, he did. That kiss pushed Hollywood one step closer to breaking free of its censorship rules. But deep down, Merv Griffin couldn't stand the slow pace of filmmaking. Waiting around for hours just to speak 2 lines in a poorly cast role wasn't his style. He wanted energy. He wanted feedback. And most of all, he wanted freedom. So he made a bold move. He bought out his Warner Brothers contract and walked away from Hollywood. What came next changed everything. Griffin jumped headfirst into the world of television. In 1958, he started hosting a new game show called Play Your Hunch. It wasn't just any show. It aired on CBS, then switched to ABC in early 1959, and finally found a long home on NBC. That kind of triple network run was almost unheard of. The format was simple: trust your instincts and pick the right answer. But behind the scenes, it was launching careers. A young Robert Redford appeared on it. So did future news anchor Ted Koppel. Even announcer Johnny Olson got his start there when he filled in for Griffin twice. Griffin was gaining fans fast, but not everyone was cheering him on. He had a long-standing rivalry with another host, Robert Q. Lewis. When Lewis took over the show later, Griffin sneered, "Old Fourier just didn't have what the public wanted. I did." As his popularity grew, ABC saw a chance to bring him into prime time. They handed him the reins of Keep Talking in 1959. The show had a clever setup. Celebrity panelists tried to guess a secret word as one teammate spun a story without actually saying it. The twist? The narration jumped suddenly between panelists. They had to keep the tale flowing without missing a beat. Griffin handled it all with ease, surrounded by stars like Orson Bean, Joey Bishop, and Jane Meadows. That show wrapped in 1960, but Griffin was no longer just a daytime figure. He had proven he could own primetime too. By 1963, Griffin's talent caught the attention of NBC again. This time, they offered him something bigger. He wouldn't just host, he'd produce. The show was word for word, and it marked the start of Griffin's behind-the-scenes influence. Just months earlier, NBC had canceled his first daytime talk show, despite critical praise. But Griffin had negotiated smartly. His contract let him keep working as a producer. That small clause opened the door to his next chapter. It also gave him crucial experience that later helped him create 2 of the most iconic game shows in history, Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Still, Griffin never gave up on talk shows. In fact, his big break came from an accident. One morning, while Griffin was filming Play Your Hunch, Jack Paar, the host of The Tonight Show, wandered onto the set by mistake. Instead of panicking, Griffin seized the moment. He interviewed Paar on the spot. That impromptu move earned him a spot as Parr's guest host during the transition between Parr's exit and Johnny Carson's arrival. Griffin became the most successful fill-in host NBC had. They didn't pick him as the permanent replacement, but they gave him his own daytime talk show. It premiered on the same day Carson debuted, October 1, 1962. Griffin's show didn't last long at first, just 6 months, but he wasn't done. In 1965, he brought it back through Westinghouse Broadcasting. This time it was syndicated. That gave local stations flexibility to air either a 60-minute or 90-minute version, day or night. In the background, Griffin's sidekick Arthur Treacher became a fan favorite, introducing him with flair. And now, here's the dear boy himself, Merv Griffin. CBS noticed the show's success and offered Griffin a late-night slot. In 1969, going head-to-head with Carson for 3 years, Griffin battled it out on network TV, bringing his thoughtful interview style and bold guest choices to national attention. But controversy followed. Griffin refused to play it safe. He invited philosopher Bertrand Russell to speak out against the Vietnam War in 1965. The backlash was immediate. Newspapers called him a traitor, but he stood his ground. He welcomed voices like Abbie Hoffman, Dick Gregory, George Carlin, and Norman Mailer, people who were divisive but important. In one episode, Griffin paired comedian Phyllis Diller with Captain Mitsuo Fukuda, the man who planned the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was risky, but it was real. By 1969, CBS executives were getting nervous. They pressured Griffin to feature more pro-war guests. He refused. When Hoffman wore a shirt with an American flag design, censors blurred him out. Griffin called it a jumble of lines. They even wanted him to fire Treacher for being too old. He pushed back. Despite beating the Joey Bishop show, Griffin couldn't dethrone Carson. CBS had fewer affiliate stations, and Griffin never had a fair shot. By 1972, fed up with interference, he returned to syndication. That move saved the show. It ran for another 14 years without corporate hands tying him down. Griffin's interview style stood out. While Carson was cool and distant, Griffin leaned in, literally. He used warmth. He wanted his guests to look good. He listened. He asked follow-ups. He cared. Instead of short promotional chats, he let conversations run 30 minutes or more. Over the years, he interviewed over 25,000 guests. His favorite, Orson Welles. The director appeared nearly 50 times. Griffin even gave full episodes to certain guests, creating episodes that felt more like living room conversations than showbiz showcases. And he welcomed people who had nothing to sell, like Zsa Zsa Gabor, who came on just to talk. The show wasn't just beloved by audiences, it racked up 10 Emmy wins. In 1985 alone, it won for Outstanding Directing and picked up 4 more nominations. Its music, directed by Mort Lindsay, earned back-to-back nods in 1970 and 1971. Griffin himself got a Golden Globe nomination in 1971 for Best TV Actor in a Musical or Comedy. And in 2008, 1 year after his death, he was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame. In 1963, Merv Griffin and his wife Julianne were flying back to New York. The quiz show scandals of the 1950s had poisoned TV executives against trivia programs. But Julianne had a wild idea. What if you gave people the answers and made them guess the questions? She tested her theory right there in the cabin. 5,280, she said. MV replied. How many feet in a mile? That spark lit the fuse for one of the most iconic shows in television history. By March 30, 1964, Jeopardy! Had aired its first episode. It was a hit. Art Fleming hosted. The format was clever, and the show felt smarter than anything else on daytime TV. But there was something else that made Jeopardy! Timeless, its theme song. Griffin had written the tune, Think, in under a minute as a lullaby for his son. That 30-second track would go on to earn him over $100 million in royalties. It was one of the most profitable jingles ever made. But Griffin wasn't done. Around the same time, memories of childhood games with his sister gave him another idea, Hangman. Simple, but gripping. He combined that with his fascination with roulette wheels. He pitched the concept to NBC, but their executive Lynn Boland said it needed more sparkle, something to attract women viewers. They added a shopping element, created a strange pilot called Shopper's Bazaar with a vertical wheel and rotary phones, and finally settled on a polished version. On January 6, 1975, Wheel of Fortune officially launched. It would become the longest-running syndicated game show in history. By the mid-1980s, Griffin had turned his little production company into a game show empire. In 1986, he made a move that shocked Hollywood. He sold Merv Griffin Enterprises to Columbia Pictures for $250 million. At the time, it was the biggest sale of an entertainment company owned by one person. Griffin became the richest performer in Hollywood. But he had negotiated a deal most creators only dream about. He kept the rights to ongoing royalties even after the sale. The money kept coming in. New spin-offs like Will 2000, Jep, and Rock and Roll Jeopardy! Were still using his original ideas. But not every show was a hit. Griffin took chances. In 1965, he created Let's Play Post Office, a quirky NBC show set in a cartoon-like mailroom. Contestants answered pun-based clues, with prizes ranging from $5 to $100. One clue. The temperature is 0. I must tell you. The answer. 0 must tell. It lasted less than a year. 2 years later, he launched Reach for the Stars, featuring music from Herb Alpert. It only ran for 65 episodes. These short-lived shows didn't dent his momentum. They just showed he was always experimenting. Griffin wasn't just building shows, he was building an empire. After the $250 million sale in 1986, he took his fortune and aimed higher. In December 1987, he bought the Beverly Hilton Hotel for $100,200,000. The place had just gone through a $35 million renovation. It wasn't his first choice. He'd wanted the Beverly Hills Hotel, but it was scooped up by the Sultan of Brunei. Still, the Beverly Hilton had history. It hosted presidents, movie stars, and major events. Under Griffin's ownership, it became the home of the Golden Globe Awards and other Hollywood ceremonies. Critics said the hotel lost its shine later on, but Griffin's showbiz touch turned it into an icon again. Then came his boldest gamble, Resorts International. Donald Trump was trying to take control, but Griffin fought back. The deal was long and messy. In the end, Griffin paid $365 million, took on $925 million in debt, and paid Trump another $60 million just to walk away. He got the Atlantic City Hotels and the Paradise Island Resort. Trump kept the Taj Mahal Casino. Griffin called it a victory. But the celebration didn't last. He had borrowed too much, mostly in junk bonds at nearly 14% interest. Within a year, Resorts International was $70 million short on cash flow. In December 1989, the company filed for bankruptcy. 1 year after beating Trump, Griffin's empire had cracked. Still, he didn't stop dreaming. In January 1998, he brought old Hollywood back to life with the Coconut Club. Every weekend, the Beverly Hilton transformed into a glittering nightclub. Griffin wanted to revive the magic of the 1940s. Gold palm trees, velvet booths, and a massive dance floor welcomed guests. Big band music filled the air. Trumpeter Jack Sheldon led the orchestra. Griffin had performed in places like this when he was young. Now he was the owner. The Coconut Club wasn't just nostalgia, it was a love letter to his past. In the bright spotlight of 1950s television, Merv Griffin was on the rise. He had charm, ambition, and a growing list of appearances. That's when he met Julan. Right, she was working behind the scenes as a secretary on the Robert Q. Lewis show. Their meeting felt ordinary at first, but soon it turned into something more. They got married in 1958. At the time, Griffin's career was just picking up speed. Few could guess this couple would later help shape one of TV's most iconic shows, Jeopardy! Behind closed doors, Julan helped MV brainstorm ideas. She was never in the spotlight, but her input helped shape his empire. They had a son, Tony, in 1959. For 18 years, their marriage held strong. But as MV's fame exploded, the distance grew. In 1976, they quietly divorced. There was no scandal, just a split during what MV called a time of doubt and uncertainty. Even after parting ways, they remained close. Julianne went on to create her own legacy, founding the first Women's Bank of California and performing stand-up comedy. Unlike most Hollywood couples, they ended things with kindness. MV became a father at the peak of his career. His son Tony was born on December 8, 1959. From that point on, people saw a softer side of the game show tycoon. He kept Tony away from the chaos of showbiz. Still, Tony grew up in the middle of it all. As an adult, he followed his own path, acting in films like Spaceballs and later starting a vineyard in Malibu. When MV died in August 2007, Tony gave a powerful eulogy at the funeral. Arnold Schwarzenegger also spoke, but it was Tony who offered the most intimate glimpse. He called his father the Energizer Bunny. Even at 82, MV had the energy of someone half his age. During that emotional service, Tony's daughter Farrah, just 12 years old, did a reading. His young son Donovan was named an honorary pallbearer. The Griffin family stayed strong even in loss. In the late 1980s, MV was seen everywhere with Eva Gabor. The media couldn't get enough of them. They were photographed together constantly, at galas, parties, and on red carpets. Rumors flew. Some thought they were in love. Some whispered they'd get married. There was even talk that Nancy Reagan might be the matron of honor. But in 1990, Gabor shut it all down. She said simply, "We're not romantically involved." Still, they were inseparable. They had met years earlier, but filming Return to Green Acres made their bond stronger. Hollywood insiders believed the relationship served two purposes. It gave them genuine friendship and helped protect MV from questions about his personal life. When Eva died suddenly in July 1995, MV was heartbroken. Her sister Jaja said he was like family. Whatever their connection truly was, it lasted until the very end. Then came the lawsuits. On April 11, 1991, a man named Brent Plott shocked Hollywood. He filed a lawsuit claiming he had been MV Griffin's lover and partner for 9 years. He said they lived together starting in 1981. He called himself Griffin's lover, confidant, secretary, driver, and advisor. And he wasn't just after a few dollars. He demanded $200 million. Plott claimed Griffin had promised him half of everything, including money from Jeopardy! And Wheel of Fortune. He even said he helped create Wheel and chose Vanna White to turn the letters. At first, Plott only asked for $400,000, but then he raised it to $200 million. He said he had left behind a career in antiques and moved to Los Angeles just for Griffin. The story was explosive. MV responded fast and without hesitation. He denied everything. He said Plott had never been his partner, just a former horse trainer and bodyguard who made $250 a week. He painted the lawsuit as an attempt to extort money. Griffin's lawyer called the claims absurd. MV even said Plott failed the lie detector test, though Plott's lawyer denied any test ever happened. By November 1991, the lawsuit was suddenly dismissed. Griffin's team wouldn't explain why. That silence only fueled more rumors. 1 month later, another shock. Denny Terrio, former host of Dance Fever, filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against MV. The details were graphic. Terrio said it all began before the show aired. He accused Griffin of pushing him onto a couch, unsnapping his pants, and groping him. He said the harassment continued for years, touching, kissing, private dressing room visits. He also claimed Griffin promised him ownership of the show and a share of the profits, but instead used those promises to control him. Terrio waited until 1991 to speak out. When he appeared on the Geraldo Rivera show in 1992, he described everything in detail. Geraldo questioned him hard, asking why he waited so long, challenging parts of his story, and even bringing up past drug rumors. The audience reacted with awkward laughter. Terrio's attorney claimed his client had passed a polygraph test. He dared Griffin's team to do the same, even waiving the polygraph results. On TV. Again, the case didn't make it to trial. It was dismissed. But like the Plott lawsuit, the silence around the ending raised questions. Some wondered if Griffin had paid them off to make it all go away. He was worth over $1 billion by the early 2000s. Maybe it was easier to make problems vanish. No matter the truth, those lawsuits changed everything. MV never admitted to anything, but the details were printed in newspapers, broadcast on TV, and whispered throughout the industry. They came long before Hollywood began truly reckoning with abuse of power, and they involved one of the biggest names in television. Terrio later said, "He blacklisted me," he said. "I was a horror story. He killed my career." Others in the industry echoed those fears, of how quickly a powerful figure could silence someone, even without a court win. MV Griffin lived one of the most public lives in America, and yet so much about him remained quietly hidden. In the early 2000s, the people in Hollywood had a secret language. It was how they talked about someone being gay without ever saying the word. In MV's case, people used phrases like, confirmed bachelor, or only mentioned his marriage to Julianne Wright, which had ended way back in 1976. Nobody asked more than that, not even the people who worked closely with him. Everyone knew, but no one ever brought it up. That was the rule. And MV was one of the best at following it. He didn't just stay quiet, he created a whole image to protect the truth. One of the most effective parts of this image was his very public friendship with Eva Gabor. They went to events together, showed up in the press constantly, and even talked about getting married. For outsiders, it looked like a love story. For insiders, it was something else entirely. In Hollywood, this kind of relationship had a name, a beard. It was a cover story. And it worked. MV played his part well. When someone asked him directly about his personal life, he didn't get flustered. He cracked a joke. In 2005, he told the New York Times, "I tell everybody that I'm a quadrisexual. I will do anything with anybody for a quarter." That one-liner said nothing and everything at once. He could laugh it off, deflect the rumors, and keep people guessing. Then, in 1991, everything almost fell apart. Two men, one a former employee, the other a TV host, filed lawsuits against him. One asked for $200 million in a palimony suit. The other accused him of sexual harassment and demanded $11.3 million. These were big numbers, and the media was watching closely. But even then, MV didn't panic. He doubled down on the Gabor appearances, showing up at high-profile events as if nothing had changed. Eventually, both lawsuits were dismissed. And just like that, the story vanished. But behind closed doors, things were different. Hollywood insiders knew MV had lived with various male partners. Some claimed he had relationships with big names, Rock Hudson, James Dean, Peter Lawford. One biographer even said MV had a virtual male harem and paid someone to bring him adult film actors. His staff might not have seen it firsthand, but they understood the truth. Everyone just kept quiet. In 2006, with his health declining, MV gave one of his last big interviews, this time to Rolling Stone. The journalist asked him point-blank about his sexuality. MV didn't deny it, but he didn't confirm it either. "You're asking an 80-year-old man about his sexuality right now? Get a life." That was his answer, a joke again. And it worked again. The interviewer noted that MV didn't say yes or no, he just changed the subject. Back to Eva Gabor. Back to safety. MV Griffin died on August 12, 2007, at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. He was 82. Prostate cancer, which he had first beaten in 1996, had come back. When the news broke, tributes poured in. 5 days later, his funeral was held at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills. Nancy Reagan sat in the front row. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger gave the eulogy. So did MV's son Tony. The room was full of stars: Vanna White, Pat Sajak, Alex Trebek, Ellen DeGeneres, Ryan Seacrest, Dick Van Dyke. Everyone came to say goodbye. MV Griffin was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park. His headstone had one last joke: "I will not be right back after this message." The Game Show Network paid tribute with weekend marathons of his shows. Millions tuned in. They remembered the laughter, the prizes, the spinning wheels.